Hello and welcome to another instalment of our occasional podcast called I Wish I Hadn't. I'm Dave Hill.
And I'm John Wyatt. As you can tell from our names, David and Jonathan, we were born in the 1950s, so we've had many years to accumulate embarrassing moments which we now feel happy to share.
The dictionary defines regret as a sorrowful remembrance, a sense of loss. But we're not in the business of sorrow and loss here. We're dealing with those things in life that we might wish had been otherwise, but which we're now prepared to own up to.
To see the funny side of a terrible haircut, that embarrassing crush you had in school, the film you wish you'd never seen, the 8 rum and blacks you sicked up in your mum's car.
Today we delve into the sweaty jockstrap hidden in the kit bag of sports and games.
So David, you are a sporting bod, aren't you? A
It
footballer.
has been known in the past, yes.
A successful footballer.
But at a
also
very low level.
very low level, yes. Yes, sort of midget level. But can one say that nowadays?
I'm not
to
sure.
be careful, don't you? You also played tennis, cricket. But then, was there any sport that you didn't enjoy that you wish,
Oh, I didn't enjoy playing rugby. There's absolutely no doubt about that.
No.
Rugby was a game, if you recall, that was always played in the winter term at school.
Yes, I wish I hadn't played rugby at all.
And I remember wanting just to play football, but the only way you could play football in the winter term was to look as if you had no chance at all of being any good to a rugby team.
That
if I
wasn't
remember
difficult
rightly.
for me.
Which some of us, I have to say, slightly natural sportsmen at times. I found that quite difficult. I was at one point put into the rugby team, and they put me on the wing. And I thought, well, that's not bad, because I'm right out on the end.
Yeah.
I'm not going to see any action at all.
No.
I don't have to do that silly thing of getting involved in all the rucks and the scrums and things.
Sweaty
but
man on man stuff.
But there's the pain of it, really.
Yeah, true. Yeah.
And now, unfortunately, the very first game I played in for the school rugby team, I sort of ran along, knowing that I had to stay behind the person in front of me to be on side and stuff. Ran along as the ball went forward. And then the ball came along the line to me at the end, in that split second where I caught the ball, because I could catch the ball quite well. And I thought, well, if I fall over now, I can lose the ball, and they won't pick me again. I fell over. As I fell, I realised there was a white line in front of me, and the ball scored a try. And I thought that wasn't the best plan.
No.
So in the second half, the same thing happened again, unfortunately. So I scored 2 tries for the rugby team, and I was never not picked again, and I hated it.
Yeah, I hated it too.
Yes, yeah.
And another thing I wish I hadn't ever done at school, although I was quite good at it, was cross country.
Oh, cross country, yes, cross country.
Where you just had to sort of sit in the depths of winter.
Oh, yeah.
You always sort of tried to get out, but the sportsmaster tended to run with you, didn't they?
Well, he ran with you, but also, if you remember, he had the knack of being back at school with a pair of binoculars.
Yes.
And the cross country route took us up over the hills.
Bastard.
Across the hills at the top of the school, and then down the other side.
Always
and
visible.
He, as in the Falkland Island thing, he counted them all out and he counted them all back in again. And if you weren't seen by his binoculars, you were in trouble for not doing.
I did get into the cross country team, but I didn't really want to. But again, it was rather like your rugby experience, so more or less by default, really. So we were more successful at other sports, weren't we? Football was your sport, cricket was my sport.
Football and cricket we both enjoyed tremendously. Well, I enjoyed the cricket and the football, and I knew your cricket was yours. I mean, football, if I think about things I wish I hadn't done, I could preface it by saying, I wish I hadn't bent down.
Okay. Yes.
You may wonder why that is, but
were you in prison at the time?
I was not in prison, but I was playing for a team that I played for at weekends when I first started teaching, and I was playing probably one of the best games that I played for them. I was playing in defence, as you well know. I used to play. I was actually playing in central defence at the time. I was playing sort of a centre half sweeper type position, and as I bent down,
Why did you
forward.
bend down?
I bent down to head the ball.
Oh, I see.
Bent down. The ball was at that sort of height where you weren't sure whether to kick it or head it. Now I decided it was at the height to head.
Yes.
The opposing forward decided.
Goonies height then.
Well, no, it was about head height basically.
Oh right. Okay.
The opposing forward decided it was at foot height for him to kick.
Oh dear.
And the ball was missed, but his boot connected with the side of my nose.
Right.
And I suffered a deviated septum,
Ooh.
which was not very pleasant at all because of, not to go into finer detail, but a great build-up of blood behind it, and it was very painful and headaches and things. I had to have hospital treatment for it.
Right.
If I hadn't bent down and I'd gone for it with my foot, they may have scored a goal for all I know, but at least I wouldn't have had that trauma.
Heroic, David.
Heroic, I thought, yes. Heroic.
You were suffering for your team.
I did suffer as well because it was tremendously painful. The headaches I had with it. Then when they drained it and packed it, the headaches continued, but they said, well, that's normal. Mm-hmm. And then a week later, once it had all healed up again, they removed the packing, and it was almost like they were almost like angels singing and lights flashing and things as the pain just vanished completely and utterly.
Amazing.
But I wish I hadn't gone through it in the first place.
Well, I'm sure you
absolutely,
do. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Well, I had several injuries playing cricket. I split the webbing in my hand twice.
I didn't know you had webbing.
I did.
Were you a duck or a swan?
Frog. Trying to take catch. The first one I dropped. The second one I caught, which is good. But both times, you look down and you have a sort of gaping hole between your fingers, which necessitates a trip to A&E. Some very painful antiseptic being squirted from a syringe into the wound,
yes,
and then it being stitched together. But the most painful one I had was when I was batting on the end of a cricket tour in Wiltshire, and went to pull the ball, and it came off the top of the bat and hit me squarely in the nose.
Ooh, nasty.
And it bled a lot. There was a large patch of blood in the middle of the wicket. I retired, obviously, because I'm not that much of a hero, I'm not going to bat on. And spent the next 3 or 4 hours with a handkerchief held to my nose. And it just kept bleeding, but it did eventually stop. But after the end of the game, we'd won, and we went to the pub with the team who'd beaten us. And so I stood. I didn't feel much like drinking, but I couldn't get home. We were in a minibus, and I was holding the handkerchief to about the third handkerchief because the other ones I'd soaked through. And we were in a pub garden, and we were challenged by the opposing team. We'd beaten them at cricket, and they said we will challenge you to something. So we had to nominate a member of our team, and one of our team was called Wayne, so he was told that he had to do exactly the same thing that the opposition captain did. Right. So the opposition captain stood on a chair, and he removed his top. We were in a crowded pub garden. He removed his top, so Wayne had to do the same. Then he removed one shoe, and then the other shoe, and so on and so forth. Removed his trousers. So by this stage, they were both standing on the chairs in socks and underpants. Yes. And then the captain of the opposing team removed his underpants, and underneath he had another pair of underpants. So Wayne rather smartly took off a sock and delved inside his own underpants, thinking to cover himself. And at that stage, the bottom of the chair gave out, and he fell through it and backwards. And the whole of the pub garden went up and applauded.
Excellent. Yeah. So the opposing team, following on from your story, won by a nose.
They did win by a nose, absolutely. Yeah.
Yes, I mean, I used to find that cricket always had lots of different stories attached to it. I remember you and I talked at one point about having good seasons playing cricket. Yeah. I think I've explained to you before, my highest score for one of the teams that I played for was 48.
Yes, it's galling, isn't
and
it?
it was extremely galling, and that's a real I wish I hadn't, because it's like almost like I wish I hadn't gone for that run. If I hadn't gone for that
but then
run,
you
I may have
always
won it,
think
but
that after you've been out
any
in cricket,
innings,
don't you?
yeah.
I wish I hadn't, you know.
I wish I hadn't, yeah.
I wish I hadn't missed it completely.
Yeah.
I wish I hadn't dropped that catch. I mean, cricket is full of, any sport is full of disappointments.
Disappointments,
isn't it,
yes,
really?
absolutely, yeah.
I mean, I one of the things that I wish I hadn't done in a way was throw games, not at sport, but for my children.
Oh yes, it's
trying
terribly...
trying to teach them that losing could be handled. You know, you could be a good loser. I don't think it taught them that at all.
No, because once they start crying because they've lost.
Well, it was mainly me who started crying. But they all became intensely competitive, and I thought this is going to show them that it's possible to lose games gracefully, but maybe it isn't. You know,
and it probably, but with something like that, it probably doesn't work anyway, because they still think, no, we've beaten him. That's
so maybe I should have been ruthless, and just thrashed them
be a real competitive
every time.
Absolutely.
And show them how it was possible to win all the time.
Coming back to football again, I mean, one of the I wish I hadn't that I always think about is the fact that when I was playing football, a different team this time, it was a different team in the south of Birmingham. We used to play, and I played for them for about 4 or 5 seasons, and there was a particular team we played against, and every time we played against this team, I was playing in the centre of the defence, and they had a centre forward who was a reasonably skilled player and a bit sort of useful with his elbows and things, but his biggest weapon was his halitosis. Because I knew on a Sunday morning that when I had to play against this guy and mark him, if I was standing close behind him, he would turn his head breathing, and it was horrendous.
Did he do it deliberately?
I do think that he didn't particularly clean his teeth on purpose, because he knew that people like me would think twice about getting too close to him to mark him. And I'll be honest, there were times when I stood off him a bit, because I thought, I can't stand this. I cannot stand this horrendous stench that was coming from this guy. He probably scored a few goals against us because I was unwilling to take that on.
Of course, the ultimate shame in school games was when you had to pick the teams, and you know. And you always felt sorry for the one who was last to be picked. Who nobody wanted. Now, fortunately, that never happened to me, and I'm sure it never happened to you.
It rarely happened to me. Yeah.
But I did get entered into things by default sometimes, because I can remember at school being entered into a throwing the cricket ball competition.
Yes.
And I've always thrown in a pretty girly fashion.
Are you allowed to say that now?
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I didn't throw well. Put it
you
that
didn't
way.
throw in a very forceful.
Well, actually, a lot of the current female cricket players can throw way better.
Yes.
But I could not throw very well. I think I came in last. I think it was because nobody else wanted to enter. And another thing, I remember being entered for a school sports day, you know, because I was a reasonable runner and you know, things like that, but there was nobody to throw the javelin.
Right, yes.
And I was hopelessly inept at throwing the javelin. You know, I mean, I don't know why they even bothered, really. They might as well have just not entered anybody.
Yeah.
Because, you know, I mean, one knows the things that sports and games that one is good at.
Yes.
Equally, one knows the things that one's bad at. And
well, you know, between you and me and anybody else who's listening, of course, that there was, for a year, I did hold the school discus throw record.
Did you?
Yes, and there was a good reason for that. They didn't have any records when they first did it, because the school hadn't been going that long, and they decided they would start to take records, and I was in the discus against some pretty feeble throwers.
Girlies.
And I threw the discus, I don't know, a reasonable amount, nothing spectacular, and it went down as a school record, the very first school record for the discus. No, I think it was well beaten the next year when someone else who could actually throw properly came along and had a go. So it certainly disappeared very quickly at that point. Yes,
yeah. I don't think I do any other things that I wish. I mean, there are lots of sports that I haven't done, and I'm sure I would have regretted if I had, like skiing and skating, and I've never wanted to take part in them because I think they would have ended badly.
They're dangerous sports, aren't they, really? Yes.
And I can't see there's ever been a sport, you know, water skiing, you know. There's not a sport that I could say I wish I, I wish I had done that.
Yes,
mostly, ones that I did take part in that ended in unfortunate accidents.
Yes, yeah.
So,
I don't. Do you ever regret when you retired from playing competitive outdoor sport, shall we say?
Well, yes, I suppose so. I mean, I could, when I stopped playing cricket, I could feel that my powers were waning. What very limited powers I had. Yeah. I used to hate fielding by that stage, and when I was young, you'd be a keen fielder. And
I think we used to discuss the fact that we enjoyed fielding.
Yeah. I would be happy to bat. I didn't really want to take part in the rest of the game. I could, maybe just say I had a bad leg or something. I guess I probably finished playing. I mean, I still play indoor cricket.
Yes.
But and I still, I could still play tennis. I don't think I would like to have had a few more years playing cricket. Frankly.
I mean, I think both those sports I gave up fairly early on. I felt
too early. Do you think?
Yeah, much too early. I think really.
Right.
I think I could. Yes, it was. I wish I hadn't. I mean, I know that the thing that made me give up the football was the fact that I was playing in a league where on a Sunday morning you would turn up at a pitch where, if you were lucky, there was a changing room, but often it was a car you had to get changed in. There was certainly no hot water, no water in most of them. It was freezing cold, and if you were substituted, you had to stand around, get colder and colder because there's no way to warm up.
Sounds like a very good reason to give
up.
It
was and also friends of mine had started on a Sunday lunchtime to go and have a couple of pints at lunchtime, and the sort of the lure of the warm pub and beer seemed far better to me than getting freezing cold out on these pitches that we used to play on.
So not really a regret that you gave up.
No, I mean I would for my own sort of peace of mind of thinking I could have played a lot longer. I wish I hadn't.
Yeah.
But I think if I'd been playing at a higher level and better player, I probably would have carried on a bit longer because you would have had change rooms and warm waters and baths and things. Yeah. And I think that's why. Certainly when I was playing cricket we tended to play in reasonable conditions and there were showers and things, so that wasn't too bad. And of course you're also playing in the summer when it tends to be a little bit warmer anyway.
A nice tea with cake.
Tea with gold. I mean, teas were always the thing to look forward to, even if you had a particularly boring afternoon fielding or batting or whatever and not been used, there was always tea and cake to look forward
and I can't ever say that there was a wish I hadn't eaten that tea because it was always quite good tea.
I do seem to recall in a particular speech you gave about me, you did say that tea was the best part of my game in cricket.
Yes, I remember that. Yeah. I don't wish I hadn't said that. I'm very proud of that.
I should think so.
That was your best man speech. My best man speech.
It was.
Wedding,
yes.
Wasn't it? Yeah. So I'm kind of guessing that it's going to be fairly easy for you and me when the genie enters to ask which one of those I wish I hadn't. He's going to remove from our lives.
Well, it's true. Yes, yeah. I mean, I'm trying to think of any other situations in our sporting life. That's Richard Harris, wasn't it? This sporting life.
Sporting life.
I mean. But then again, I think that was to do with rugby league, wasn't it? And
I think it was.
That would have been even worse for me than the schools rugby we played. Yeah. I mean, what else do I wish I hadn't done in sport? I mean, we always used to enjoy tennis. I do recall that when we played tennis in the school courts, when we first started playing, we scored as if it was a table tennis match.
Did we?
I don't know if you remember that. Yes, we used to go up to 21.
Just because we didn't know.
Because we didn't know how to score, and it took two older girls to explain to us how the scoring worked. Yeah, it's terrible. Yeah, I think we were only about 12 or 13 at the time, but so that's not too bad, really. Yeah. So
I think the genie for me is going to remove the one where I was hitting the nose because that was.
I would have thought so.
Pretty unpleasant.
Yeah. And also, I mean, I suppose. For the same for me, I think the nose comes into it again.
I think that's why it was pretty obvious.
I think I really do wish I hadn't bent down to that ball that came in.
Yeah,
I should have used my.
I mean, you play sport for fun and enjoyment. You don't play it for pain, do you?
No,
really?
no. I mean, there are those who enjoy the painful side of it, or it's part of the scars and the enjoyment of playing.
Well, probably rugby players.
Yeah, I was quite happy to
they
get through.
enjoy sticking their head up another man's jackson.
Yes,
you know?
indeed, yeah.
And what's the pleasure in that?
Indeed,
Yeah.
indeed. Absolutely.
Yeah. So I think we've pretty comprehensively covered.
I think we have sport and games as far
Yeah.
as we're concerned.
Another one done.
Another one done.
Yeah.
Join us next time for another, we hope, interesting look at our past achievements and non-achievements and those things
Mainly
that we wish we hadn't done in yet another subject area.
Absolutely.